All right, and we are live with Podcast for All Seasons. This is Josh Mundy, and today we're doing Season 4, Episode 2.1. Usually our point 1 or point 2 episodes, we talk about something that's kind of out of our main wheelhouse, and today we're going to be talking about the new CW hit, if you believe CW's advertising, Riverdale. It's pretty popular amongst the younger crowd, as me and Eric found out when we went to a local screening. But it's got a lot of appeal for people who like dramas in the vein of a CW drama, which is a pretty decent sized audience. And with me, as always, is my co-host Eric Joseph. Eric's going to get us started today. We also have a special guest today, a longtime Archie comic book fan and friend of ours. So she decided to join us to talk all things Riverdale. Eric, why don't you go ahead and get us started and introduce our guest?
Hi, Josh, and hi to everybody listening. As Josh said, this is 8.1, meaning we're not talking anything DC related. We are talking Riverdale, and as such, maybe in the future we'll do one of those things as they do on the commercial breaks. We'll see how using CoverGirl makeup I get to become Eric every week. Anyway, before I introduce our guest, I just want to say to those of you in the Metro Detroit area, be sure to check out Midwest Media Expo next weekend, April 28th through 30th at the Edward Hotel. I think that's what it's called this week. It seems they changed the name of that place like 9 times a year, but basically the old Hyatt across from the Fairlane Town Center. So we'll be there. I'm covering it for We Got This Covered. Josh is helping me with photos and whatnot. I'll be Green Arrow on Saturday, so you can basically see what my costume looks like. Picture from Ypsilanti Comic Con last month. But anyway, before we get into things, let me introduce our special guest. She's been a friend of ours for a few years, and as it turns out, she really loves Archie. So it seemed like if there was anyone we knew that was appropriate for discussing this new show, as we try to touch on all things comic book related as much as we can. Before I start rambling, introduce yourself. Welcome to the show, Stevie Yeager.
Thank you. I am very excited. And as you said, I have been a fan of Archie comics probably since I was about 5-6 years old. So we're going on 21 years.
Awesome.
How did you first get into it?
It was actually my mother. At a very young age, she started buying me the Archie comics. And we would go to a lot of antique stores. And that's when I started getting some of them from about the 50s and the 60s. And then throughout the years, I have a collection now of about 450 of the Archie comics.
That is a pretty sizable. What do you? Okay, what in comic terms, people like to talk in terms of long boxes. I'm hoping that you, at the very least, are appropriately storing your Archie comic books. Do you get a long box? Do you get a short box? What do you got?
You would be very disappointed in me. I have regular boxes that they are stacked in.
Well, that's better than just like storing them in a bag in your closet or something.
Well,
I respect my comics.
It's good. That's very good.
As long as nobody does what Grant Morrison does and reads their comics in the tub.
In the tub, yeah, exactly. Well, he's probably getting enough free comic books from DC and whoever else he writes for that he doesn't need to worry about paying for new ones.
Anyway, what was I going to say here? Lost my train of thought, Josh. Thanks.
Snap into it, Eric. You got to get ready. So, okay, I will. I'm going to let Stevie. We like to give our guests the honor of kind of starting us off first. So, we were going to talk about what exactly got you into Archie comics. Now, you said that your mom got you into Archie comics and that you've been a fan for quite a little time, almost 20 some years. I've also been collecting for 20 plus years, not Archie comic books. So I'll just say that I have not really been a big fan of the Archie comic books. I mean, obviously, they've been sporadically in newspaper print for ages. This serialized Sunday comics kind of version, along with so many other comic books. Spider-Man, that's how I got into reading Spider-Man back in the day. Occasionally you would see Archie. So I was familiar with the characters, if only, tertiarily through movies like Richie Rich, and then I became aware that Richie Rich was part of that universe, or Sabrina the Teenage Witch was not a show that I watched as a kid, but I was aware of it. So I haven't really read Archie, but I have picked up a few since they kind of had their revitalization, which was how long ago, guys, was that?
I think they started that in like 2015 or something, and I'll use this opportunity to say that I too had only a vague familiarity with Archie until about 2014 when I was put on their press list. I'm not currently on it now, but I've started reporting on Archie since I've been reporting on the comic book world abroad. We got this covered, but yeah, once I started, being able to read the Archie comics, I realized that when you write articles, you get a lot of negative comments these days. Well, more so when you're writing a comic book movie. But a lot of people like to say the worst of what they can, and a lot of people, they only see the Archie comics at face value or as outdated. But once you read them, you do realize the value of what they are, and what they contribute to humor comics. But then what they've been doing in the past few years since they relaunched, and they get these huge names in the industry like Mark Waid, Fiona Staples, and so on. Frank Thierry, who recently did the Jughead one shot, The Hunger. There's really this creative renaissance over there, and yes, they're taking a little bit more of a dramatic tone to it, which the TV series used as a jumping point. But especially with Betty and Veronica, the humor's there. And I say if you like the show, or if you want a good comic outside of superheroes in general, don't be afraid to pick up Archie. And if what we said isn't your thing, check out their horror books, because Afterlife with Archie and Chilling Adventures of Sabrina are pretty damn awesome, even though their shipping schedules are terrible and they need to get on the ball with those and at least try to make them bi-monthlies, or say, hey, this book's a quarterly, and get it on some kind of schedule. But they're doing good stuff over there.
Yeah, I think that the Afterlife with Archie, which is kind of this this play on the Life with Archie series, was a really interesting decision, and it was extraordinarily popular, and it was really, really well received critically. They actually are they're pretty dark, and I don't want to say terrifying, but it's kind of like the Walking Dead. Obviously, it's like zombies. It's the whole idea of Afterlife with Archie. It's a zombification of all of these characters that we've known forever. But yeah, it was definitely really interesting. And then they kind of went full horror with the Sabrina comic book. So I've read several issues of the Afterlife with Archie, and I've read a few of the Sabrina ones. Stevie, have you delved into any of the more modern stuff, or the Afterlife series at all?
I did get into Afterlife with Archie for a little bit for the start. And I'm not going to lie, when I first read it, I actually had a hard time digesting it, because you're just so used to, the characters being like Pleasantville. And it took me a minute to get into it, because it kind of threw me off, because you don't see the characters like that. But the more that I got into it, they're really, really well done. And even the art styles, I absolutely fell in love with the art styles, because it was different, it was new. And for the most part, I would say that the Archie comics are very timeless. I mean, everyone can relate to having someone that they want that they can't have, the love triangles, the eating too much like Jughead likes to do. But having the Afterlife series, I thought that it was really cool, because it did get away from the normalcy of what the comics were used to, and they needed that. To be honest, they really, really needed that, and to try something new to also hit a bigger audience as well.
Yeah, I would agree for sure.
We'll segue into the show from here. I'll let you more so get into your overview first, Stevie, since you're the guest. So tell us kind of what your impression of the show is so far, and how it plays out to someone who's been basically a lifelong fan of these characters, because I know there are some deviations. Like, you and I have both said Jughead's our favorite character, but I don't think you quite got this parallel as much, but maybe some of those listening do. He's very comparable to Noah from Scream to me. I do want to see him down a lot of burgers at some point. I know they did a nod to that this past week. I mean, the week before with when Betty presented him the birthday cake that was like a giant burger. So I know maybe they're going for too much realism that if he eats all those burgers, he's going to have a stroke like Peter did on Family Guy. But who knows? But anyway, what are you thinking of it? We've got 3 episodes left this season, actually.
Well, you and I have talked about this show before it even started, and I had a very hard time because I was worried that it was going to take a completely different turn and it was going to be done in a very poor manner. So I was very stubborn at first about wanting to even watch the show. But I have to say, the more that I watch it, the more I find myself being sucked into it, because they do have those drama aspects and they do have hints of the comics, especially going back to some of the original ones that they had. So I do like that. And even then, I find that the characters, the people that they have portraying the characters, fit it very well. Like Betty, I think that she is spot on. Jughead, I'm still warming up to the differences of how he was in the comics, but it kind of reminds me actually of Nancy Drew, the whole mystery writing detective side of it. So I enjoy that, but they do have to appeal to the audience now and what the audience wants. But for the most part, I'm actually pretty impressed with it so far. I've been watching every episode, so that says something right there on time.
Yeah, there have been a few times when you and I have live chatted during it or whatever, or texting if you want to simplify it. But it's like, and to call back to the Cover Girl reference, I think you and I had a laugh. It was like episode 2 or 3 when they did a tight shot out of nowhere on a Cover Girl kid or something like that, or
Oh, when Betty had the lipstick, that was it. When she was in
Right.
her room, and it was just a straight shot on the CoverGirl lipstick, and it was like, seriously?
Yeah, I think that a lot of shows have been getting more into that. I think more recently there was that one, obviously, because I watch it every episode as well. But I think it was Supernatural, which I'm not sure if you watch, Stevie. I know Eric does. And, I can attest to the fact that it's like when all of a sudden, Sam and Dean are, dealing with something, and then they just have like a tight shot on like a product, and it's like, product placement. I get that that's how they make some additional revenue, but it's slightly painful to watch for sure.
Well, even the one, I don't remember what episode it was, but it was when Veronica sang with Josie and the Pussycats. And I believe it was Josie when she was putting on her mascara. It was just that awkward standstill of the mascara name. And I'm like, why can't you be a little more subtle about it?
yeah, this isn't Smallville with the Stride Gum Factory or the immortal line, "Thank God for AccuView."
I still think my favorite one was during like a football episode in season 4, and it was like, welcome to the I think it was like, welcome to the Old Spice Red Zone Stadium or something, and like, Clark has like the Old Spice Red Zone like in his locker, and like, yeah, okay, if you're playing football, you totally have some deodorant in there, but like, just the whole placement, they were not subtle about it at all, and it made for some very cornily, painful scenes for sure.
Yeah, that's like if anyone watches Lucha Underground, I think one of their I think Bagel Bites furnishes production or something, but you don't see any ads for them. It's like, why not go for it? Have a guy take a power bomb on a frozen box of Bagel Bites or something.
He
Never heard
pulls one out of the freezer and just hits it with him like it's a frying pan or something,
or
the
just
classic.
empties them out of the bag like the thumbtacks. But anyway, I guess I'll say my kind of overview of it. I really have been digging it. I know it kind of has the teen drama thing to it, and that's expected because the characters are teenagers. And although that's not necessarily something most of us may watch, I think we kind of overlook those aspects when it's based on a comic book. But the show does impress right from the pilot episode. I mean, the pilot may not be the best episode, and they often aren't when it comes to the first season, but uh, the show's extraordinarily well done. Like, even from the opener, you see just how well shot it is from a cinematography standpoint. I'm guessing they shoot in Vancouver. I don't know for sure, but a lot of CW shows shoot there probably for cost saving reasons. A lot of the DC shows certainly do. But although it's not exactly like the comics, and some people have called it Douchedale or whatever, I think they have hit a lot of the familiar beats, and they've had some nice nods to the comics without it necessarily.
Douchedale? I was unaware of this phenomenon. It's pretty hilarious. I can't deny it.
I do think it's funny that they aren't quite going for the pairings that you would assume right off the bat. I mean, we see that on shows. I mean, they might not necessarily get Clark Kent and Lois Lane together right off the bat, Barry Allen, Iris West. I think we probably will see Archie end up, from a narrative standpoint, right now it's going to make sense if he ends up with Betty in the long run, because they've built up that childhood friends thing, and like, I'm not good enough for you, Betty.
But I don't want that. Like, I love the idea of her and Jughead together. I didn't think that I would at first, but I love that. I would be very sad if she ended up with Archie.
I think so. I watch it with my wife, and I'm like, when I saw the Jughead thing, and I'm kind of like, no, it's got to be Archie. I mean, I will say that, like, it organically makes some narrative sense, and it would be expected that, if he doesn't want anything to do with her in that way, then of course she's going to eventually move on. But I mean, if she's been pining, if she's been burning that candle for Archie for God knows how long, and then she's obviously also known Jughead for that long, like, it just seems like it would be very unnatural for her to just, like, quickly jump ship so quickly. And then it would always be the endless knowledge for Jughead to know that he's just a rebound boy, and that would definitely be problematic. But as my wife likes to point out, is that Archie's been very douchey. Yes, I guess maybe that's where Douchedale comes from. He's been very much a kind of a douchey dickhead character. I didn't find the relationship with the Pussycat to be very natural. They seem like a bad fit right off the bat, and it just seemed very forced. As most.
Yeah, he wasn't good enough for Josie.
I feel like it was like a forced, it was like a diversity hire. It was like, let's give him a black girlfriend because then we can't be considered racist. And it's just one of those things where I felt like, she just came off as, like, I don't know, not an affectionate character that I would, like, he was seduced by the teacher. Obviously we're going to be talking heavy spoilers, so let's get that out of the way real quick. But he's obviously seduced by the teacher, whose name I'm escaping, and I'm sure both of you or either of you can correct me on her name. But
Grundy.
Is it Grundy? Born. Oh, you're right, exactly. No, I just feel like, that is something that is somewhat believable. Like, it's this classic childhood trope of, like the super hot seducing teacher. And
I don't know. I wish they went classic Grundy, so Archie got female faction on the 4th of July.
She's 80. She's like, I remember the first 4th of July. The thing is, that felt somewhat believable. Like, I mean, let's be honest. You're walking home from school, it starts raining, and that chick picks you up in her car, and you look like Archie does. I mean, I could see things happening for sure. But it just, yeah, that felt like it was like a very forced relationship with the pussycat whose name I also cannot remember. And the fact that I can't.
Valerie. Well, with Valerie and his relationship, it went from happening, and then the last few episodes, it just kind of dwindled off. That I even forgot that she was in the picture until I think it was the last episode when they were walking. He was chasing after her, and she pretty much told him off. And then at the party, when she did, but it didn't even seem like there was anything there. They didn't build any of that up like as they're doing with Betty or Jughead.
I mean, maybe it's like a commentary on the fact that you kind of can't force something that's just not happening. I mean, who knows? I doubt they're getting that meta, but I guess now is as good a time any for me to jump in and comment on what I think so far of it. So I've came into this a lot less, I guess, initiated, you could say, than the rest of you. Obviously, Stevie's been a fan for much, much longer than Eric, but Eric had been just balls deep in Archie comics for a few years because of his work on a couple different comics websites. And he was getting, obviously, tons of stuff. So he was constantly keeping me kind of in the loop, which is something that we tend to do when we're reading books that the other one isn't, kind of giving an idea of what's been going on in those different comics. And I thought it was an odd thing that they were kind of going with the more mature theme. I mean, I do understand that there's keeping up with the times. I mean, Superman's not, playing baseball with planets anymore, or like himself. It just, it seems very antiquated when you go back and you look at a 1950s or 60s Superman or Batman comic. And, I understand that those characters have to change. It's like, oh, that darn Joker making jokes again, murdering all those people. I mean, it's, you can't have that, be sustainable over time. So I understand that Archie would be the exact same thing, and you just can't have it. It's like, which one will he pick, Betty or Veronica? And it's like, yeah, after a point, realistically, one of them's going to end up with someone else, or they're going to temporarily date or something like that. So,
by the way, did Archie and Veronica so totally do it in the last episode?
I don't think so. Because he was on the floor, I don't think it got to that point, and I think that's why she smiled when she woke up, because I don't think it got that far.
Yeah, I mean,
impression they just made out or something, because
I like to think that maybe like Archie drunkenly passed out or something, or maybe she did, and then it was just like, okay, well, I'll put her to bed, which makes me very happy, because then we don't have to deal with another Riverdale PSA about consent or something. It's the last thing I want to see on that show. I felt like we got enough about that when it was like, he talked bad about girls in that notebook. Let's physically assault him and almost drown him in a hot tub. I feel like we've done our PSA about sexual harassment. I think that we're good for the series. I don't know. That's just my opinion. I felt like it was really contrived and forced.
Yeah, no matter how vile some jock is, go ahead and turn into Jigsaw.
Well, I mean, I felt like it was like the whole let's roofie him. That will teach the lesson of moral superiority and the moral high ground when we drug him and then handcuff him to a pool or something.
I didn't look at it as it was a PSA or anything like that, to be quite honest. I think that if anything, it was showing the fact that Betty just went off the wall for just even a book alone, which should have just been you know what, don't even worry about it, don't even think about it, whatever. But that, I think, was kind of the first sign of her darker side that she does have. That's how I looked at it, is that was the introduction for whatever Betty has, that she's hiding, the other side of Betty. I think that was just a really strong introduction of something that was almost trivial that she made into this huge situation with Chuck.
Now, do we have a history in comic books, even the more modern ones, of so-called Dark Betty at all?
Maybe I see Eric would probably know more with the afterlife, but when in in the other comics, no, she was always pretty just in love with Archie. She didn't really have a mean bone in her body. They would do like joking ones, where the one I was actually just reading the other night, Betty was walking around with a rifle that she had to pick up for her dad, and she was trying to ask Archie out, and Archie was scared and, agreed to it because Betty was carrying around this rifle, which she didn't even think about. That's like the extent of what I've seen on the quote unquote dark side of Betty, at least in the original comics.
Yeah, that was basically what I thought. But okay, as far as getting aside from individual little things, as far as my overall view of the show, though, I've compared it to a few other things to people that I watch. I mean, it's kind of one half Vampire Diaries minus the supernatural element. It's just kind of a semi-adult. Obviously, they're teenagers, but as far as the way that they display and treat the subject matter, it's a relatively adult-themed drama, love drama or whatever. So I'd make it a comparison to that. The other comparison that I find really hard to not make is, at the very least, the first season of the show on ABC, Desperate Housewives. And that's that's a show that went on for several seasons and really fizzled out towards the end. But I forget who suggested for me to watch it because they knew I was into mysteries, and I really do like a good mystery story, a good murder mystery story. I've been a fan of shows like even Murder, She Wrote, or various other murder mystery shows throughout history. And Nancy Drew is one that Stevie mentioned. My wife loves Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys, and we watched those so many times I can't even count. But the first season of Desperate Housewives, its hook was very, very similar. It was who killed this best friend of the group, or in this case, it was, I believe, she killed herself, and it was like, what could have possibly led to her killing herself in this, this seemingly perfect housewife who had this happy, beautiful family. How did none of us know that she was so distraught that she would actually kill herself? And obviously through the course of that season, you kind of find out that no, she didn't kill herself. She was killed, and all this, that, and the other. Or maybe she did. She wasn't killed. Maybe she did kill herself because she had no other options based on the crazy circumstances of that show. It was very kind of like soap opera-y. And I do feel like there's a little bit of that in Archie. But the Jason Blossom killing thing, I felt like that was, they introduced us to a very Twins Peaky type of town. Riverdale has had some comparisons made on social media and various websites to the Twins Peak phenomenon, and it has a little bit of that feel of who killed Laura Palmer kind of situation. So those things are really positive as far as I'm concerned. I mean, the first season of Desperate Housewives, I get made fun of for it all the time. It's a super solid season of television. You don't have to continue watching the show after that, but the first season was extraordinarily solid. Every answer that you want to get about that murder is solved in the first season. And then from there, they just, you've been introduced to these characters and they have new mysteries every season. But the first season was a great standalone, I guess, extended movie. And I feel like Archie could kind of have that if it doesn't take off and get a second or a third season. I'm sure at this point it'll get a second season, but I've really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed it. My wife enjoys it. So, I mean, I'll stick around for sure. It's an enjoyable show. I look forward to it every week, which, isn't something even that happens with shows that I love. Like Supernatural, it's, we're in the 12th season. Yeah, I love Supernatural, but I'm not like, oh, I can't wait for Supernatural. Even in the second or third season of The Flash, I'm not like, oh, I can wait to watch that. But that one, I want to know the mystery. I want to know the answer to the mystery. So that's the hook that's bringing me back for sure.
Yeah, it has been renewed for a second season, and I guess this will segue into talking about the murder mystery itself. That is a very easy hook to get people coming back. It makes me wonder what they will get for the second season as the overall arc, because it gives that show that kind of edge, and there has to be that overall thing. Maybe they'll come up with something with Hiram Lodge. I don't know. It really matters. Maybe we'll get an idea after the season finale. I do know that they're supposed to reveal who the killer is in episode 12. So I don't know if it's going to be one of those things like you're going to see the killer alone in a room and we get that kind of reveal, or if it's going to be outed to the rest of the principal cast. But doing it in episode 12 does give you time to explore the fallout of it in episode 13. So we're just going to have to kind of wait and see with that.
Right.
But I could see we learn who the killer is, but the rest of the cast doesn't know. But we kind of continue with that story in season 2. But I kind of have a feeling that they want to go in a different direction, because from the start, my prime suspect was Cheryl Blossom being the killer, something they actually brought up in the most recent episode. I believe it was Veronica who pointed the finger at her. Just because it was originally, when I think they were doing the character descriptions, they flat out referred to Veronica as the villain. And, you know, it could be like she tossed Jason overboard and then came back a week later, found him alive, and, you know, barely clinging to life in the woods and shot him in the head. It could be that, you know, they kind of hinted at the twin cest thing, though I don't know they're going to go that total route, which they did in the Afterlife comics. They did do the incest thing. But for me, I compare Cheryl and Jason to Alfred and Alexia Ashford from Resident Evil Code Veronica. Maybe if it had been the other way around and Cheryl died, Jason would have, you know, dressed up like her and stuff and had this. So I don't know.
All right, well, that's as good a segue as any into leading.
For now, yeah, I was gonna say I my gut still says Cheryl's the prime suspect, but I think there's layers to this because we've seen the South Side Snakes. I don't think they're total. I don't think they had something to do with the murder, but I think they have knowledge of it. Like maybe they were paid to cover up, like burn that car and whatnot. We saw Jughead's dad had Jason's coat in his closet. Like I said, I don't think they pulled the trigger, but they're tied up in it somehow. But there's, who knows, maybe Betty does have a fractured psyche and she killed Jason because of what was going on with her sister, but she does not know she killed Jason. And there's this dark Betty. It's like a Harvey Dent Two-Face kind of thing where one half of the brain doesn't know what the other's doing. I mean, that's almost going ventriloquist if we're continuing with the Batman vein, but it's going to be an interesting next 3 episodes, and I don't know, maybe I'll have more to say in this vein, but why don't we throw it over to Stevie?
Yeah, she hasn't been talking in a while. Definitely, Stevie. Who do you think is the killer?
Well, you guys do talk a lot, both of you. But no, I don't think that it's Cheryl. I think Cheryl's just kind of that lost girl that's still trying to find herself, and that's why she's kind of all over the place. But with the last episode, I'm actually kind of going towards Mrs. Lodge now, just because they're trying to paint such a good picture of her trying to, you know, amend for everything that her husband did. And when Veronica asked Smithers, you know, what is my mother like? And the fact that Hiram keeps questioning his wife and having Veronica question how she is, that's starting to make me wonder that she can't just be this, you know, this good wife, this good mother that had no idea what her husband was involved with. And then all of this happened. And now she's suddenly trying to make amends for it. That I'm wondering if she's actually covering for a lot more than what she says that she is.
I will then, I guess, give my take. So we all have 3 different answers then. So Eric's leaning towards Cheryl. You're leaning towards Mrs. Lodge, and I am leaning towards Mr. Cooper. I think that Betty's dad was responsible for it, and I'm thinking that either he did it in the heat of passion. My suspicion is he found out about the tryst somehow between, well, obviously he knew about the tryst between Polly and Jason. And my guess is that he found out somehow about their secret meeting. My guess is that the whole Cheryl and Jason thing of it, I think that that's really a red herring, and I think that, you know, we are supposed to maybe suspect that that's something that's happening. They're throwing a lot of like little sidebars. Like we saw the coat of Jason inside Jughead's dad's closet. So we know that he has some involvement in it, but we don't know the timeline of when he got that coat. We don't know if it was before he died. We don't know if it was after he died and he was doing some form of cover up. I do think that the snakes are involved. But my suspicion is this. My suspicion is the father, Polly's father, found out about it. You saw how angry he was about the idea that his kid is going to have, you know, blossom blood, or his grandchild. He's disgusted by the very thought of it. He wanted to take Polly to get an abortion, which is, you know, super adult subject matter for, you know, a show from, you know, kind of aimed at teens, and for the Archie series, for God's sakes. I'm thinking that he found out about the tryst, confronted him. You're not going to take my daughter. They fought. He killed them. Something happened. Maybe one of the snakes showed up. Maybe Jughead's dad, he got a payoff because, you know, Jughead's dad didn't really have an official job, although he's getting money from Hiram Lodge for, you know, kind of making the movie park, you know, unsellable, or, you know, making it look like a dive. And he probably gave him a payoff. Hey, I need you to hide this body or do your best or whatever. You'll be my alibi if worse comes to worse, something like that. I don't know. That's my suspicion. I could be way off, but that's where I'm leaning right now.
I feel like, though, that if it were Hal, that almost makes it too easy. And I think with Hal, he wanted to get rid of, you know, Jason by taking Polly away and the unborn baby. But I don't think that would get him to I don't think he has it in him to kill Jason. And even then, if it were between Mr. and Mrs. Cooper, I would say Mrs. Cooper over Hale, because she seems to have more of the she's more able-bodied
too.
Well, and she has ties to the snakes. I mean, we found it out in the last episode that she knew all of them from a very early age, and that's why FP, Jughead's dad, was like, you know, you can never shed your skin.
This is a good point. This is true.
I do think the Coopers are too obvious, and I don't think Occam's razor is going to apply here. But you know, with the Cheryl thing, you know, like I said, I'm not 100% going with her. But you know, the actress Madeline Petch did a Facebook Live thing talking about it, and you know, actors can always misdirect, but it sounds like she's going to have involvement in season 2, and I can see like whatever happens in the next 3 episodes are going to affect her deeply. So I wouldn't doubt if she goes through some kind of personal growth and eventually even gets welcomed into Archie's inner circle at some point.
Who is that you mentioned?
Cheryl.
Oh, Cheryl. Yeah, I could feel that. And I will say, yeah, the Coopers do seem like an obvious choice, especially the dad with how angry he is about it. I mean, I'm probably not right. I think that the idea of Betty, though, I do. It seems obvious now that we've been introduced to Dark Betty that that seems like, although they haven't heavily hinted at it, it does seem like now kind of a semi-obvious thing. Like, well, wait, it probably makes sense. Maybe Betty lost her shit, doesn't remember it herself. But that would totally change the entire show going forward, because even if she doesn't know about it and does find out about it, we know we're not going to have Betty in jail or some trial unless they decide to go super daytime drama with it. And I feel like it would really break the dynamic of ever a potentiality of a relationship between her and Archie if, you know, Dark Betty ends up murdering somebody. So I hope that that's not true, but I see it as a possibility.
Yeah, because the 3 core characters, I mean, of course there's Jughead, but I don't think you can mess with Archie, Betty, and Veronica because those are the three icons. I mean, that's the trinity of Archie comics. But Stevie, I know you just said your prime suspect, but I'll bring up the fact that when the show was first airing and before the first episode, Betty was your original call for the killer.
Yeah, she was, and kind of touched on that. I think it's very interesting that from the comics, you always had Betty was the one that was the good girl, the go-to girl that helped everyone, and Veronica was pretty much the mean girl. And it's interesting to see that in the show they have it reversed now. That Betty's actually kind of starting to become. We're starting to see this darker side of Betty, and Veronica's the one that's actually being the good girl, like with her helping Ethel. Um, and her wanting to do the right thing. So I think that's interesting. But the more I see with Betty, the more it just kind of seems like she's on, she's about to have that mental breakdown. But I don't think that she did that with Jason. I just, there's something about it that I can see her in the future going off and maybe killing someone, but I can't see her having done that with Jason in the past. Not anymore. Not as time goes on.
Yeah, I mean, also, unless there's a complete split between Dark Betty and Betty, I think that the fact that we know she did not have a full knowledge of that relationship, and when I say a full knowledge, I mean also the fact that obviously Polly was pregnant. She knew about the relationship. She knew that it ended poorly, but she didn't have the full knowledge of the fact that it was actually a loving relationship and they were going to elope. So I think that changes things a little bit, the math, but yeah, I don't know. So the next thing,
there is a way they can get around this. In the finale, they split Betty with the black kryptonite. So Betty and Dark Betty are two separate entities, and then they put Dark Betty in jail or kill her. And then we have the girl next door.
Betty.
What do you think of that?
I don't know if Stevie's caught up on her Smallville references, but yeah, I don't think that that's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm not really up there with the Smallville references.
You know what though? Speaking of supernatural elements in the show, though, me and Eric have talked. This wasn't kind of in the range of things we were going to discuss, but because the Archie comics has this cast of characters that are not in the Archie comics directly, but are owned by Archie comics, of Richie Rich, Sabrina the Teenage Witch. What do you think about the idea? Me and Eric have briefly talked about that. You guys might have talked about it. What do you think about the idea, Stevie, of them potentially bringing in some of those characters into Riverdale?
I have always been a fan of Sabrina, especially. I mean, I also love the show too. I'm not gonna lie, I did. I've watched all of them. But I think it would be cool. However, if they, like with Sabrina, for example, if they were to bring in the magic twist of it, I think that would be a little too much. But I think that if they had just even Sabrina's character, for example, I think that would be really cool to have the other characters come in, because they did that with Josie and the Pussycats even. And to be honest, within the comics, Cheryl and Jason also weren't really big. They weren't really big in the series for the most part. A lot of the digest, the double digest, it was always Betty and Veronica, Jughead and Archie, the Pales one that they had. So there's kind of these characters from all over that they're bringing in, that they're actually making major characters in the show.
Yeah, because didn't Cheryl have her own comic book? Did I see, or was it like kind of like those one shots kind of deal?
Yeah, I don't think, from what I remember, I don't think that she had like the digest or the double digest, but she would have, her panels in there. They'd have stories of it. And then Jason for the most part would just kind of be in the comics, but there weren't really a whole lot. It's the same thing with the Cabots. I don't know if you know anything about that. They were the managers of the Pussycats, Alex Cabot was, and they didn't really touch a whole lot of base on them in the comics. So to see like the Blossoms as major characters in Riverdale, I kind of have a feeling that they're going to bring in characters from other comics as well.
Yeah, I noticed like how you said they make the Blossoms more prominent. I also kind of think Moose has been downplayed. Reggie's had a certain prominence. They've certainly downplayed the whole Moose and Midge dynamic, but how maybe things will change in season 2. But I've written articles about Sabrina and possibilities of spin-offs over at We Got This Covered, whatever the producers have said, because I've said if anyone gets a spin-off, it should be Sabrina. They could introduce her and do a backdoor pilot of sorts, because once you give someone a spin-off, you're really not going to see them on a main series, even though crossovers are more prevalent these days, especially over at the CW. But you can't give the spin-off to like Jughead, Betty, or Veronica. It's really going to have to be someone like Sabrina, but they could do it. I know it's kind of, you're introducing magic into this realistic world is kind of iffy, but if you write it well enough, it could possibly work. But I could see the spinoff being something like Chilling Adventures, only modern as opposed to in the 60s, because to do a Sabrina TV series now, you can't rehash the one with Melissa Joan Hart. I think you would have to do it more serious, so it's more in tone with Riverdale, but make the horror elements so it's also its own series. And please make good on trying to do Afterlife with Archie specials like every Halloween or something. They already did a nod to it with the zombie Jason in the dream sequence, but even so, doing one episode of Afterlife per year pretty much puts it on a better schedule than the comic book at this point. So we'll see.
Yeah, I found the idea. What do you think about that idea, Stevie? If they did an Afterlife like special for a Halloween time episode?
There's a few shows that I've seen that they've done that they kind of take that unrealistic approach and kind of make it different. I'd be okay with it. I mean, I kind of have a feeling that they're probably going to, even because, like we were talking about earlier with the incest with Cheryl and Jason. Obviously, in the original comic books, that's never mentioned at all, but they're bringing that in from Afterlife with Archie. So I think that that is a very real possibility. And one of the other things that I wanted to touch on that Eric was talking about the characters, how the way they downplay them, it's also really interesting to see how the way they change the personality of the characters that they have downplayed. Because actually, Reggie in the comic book series is more similar to how the way Chuck is acting in Riverdale, as well as a lot of the relationships that they had. They don't have, like Nancy and Chuck. They were a couple, and Chuck was like this artsy kid that was very kind-hearted and a sensitive soul, and then Moose was in love with Midge, and Reggie was the one chasing after all the girls. So I'm just kind of leaving Riverdale open to the fact that they can do anything really at this point, because they have changed a lot compared to the original comics.
So okay, so we were going to cover pretty much most of the stuff that we've covered, and we're running up on the last few minutes of the episode here. So, Eric, what do you think as far as an overall rating of the show? Is the hook enough to keep you, like, after we, because this is a legitimate problem with a lot of shows. I think, Stevie, you were mentioning earlier, and I was going to chime in on it, but I didn't want to continually cut in. The Twin Peaks reference we made, and one of the big problems with Twin Peaks was when it aired was that people were really, really, really angry that we didn't find out who killed Laura Palmer after the end of the first season. They had a similar problem in a more modern show, The Killing on AMC, where we didn't find out who killed the main murder victim, whose name I cannot remember for some reason. But it was a very Twin Peaksy type of thing. Their whole tagline was "Who killed this girl?" And they didn't give it away at the end of the first season. And a lot of people felt cheated by that. So if we don't find that out, people are going to feel cheated. But if we do find out who killed Jason Blossom, you kind of lose a little bit of that hook. And, the characters had better be strong enough to bring them back. So Eric, what's your overall rating so far? And do you think that after we find out who the killer is, or if we don't find out who the killer is, do you think that we're going to have enough of a hook to keep, bringing people back for the next season?
Yeah, I think, like I said earlier, they're going to have some kind of hook that's not maybe necessarily another murder mystery. Maybe there's something on top of this, like over on Gotham. Bruce Wayne keeps finding out there's yet another layer, like his parents were killed by Matches Malone, who was hired by Hugo Strange, who was working at the behest of the Quarter of Owls, which is run by Ra's al Ghul. I don't think it's going to have that many layers. They could have some kind of other overarching thing, but I'm already attached to the show and the actors, so unless it takes a complete dive in season 2, which I don't see happening, I'll keep coming back. At least they are giving us some kind of payoff by letting, at least the viewers are going to know who the killer is in a couple weeks. That's the good thing. And I don't like when they leave big things hanging for too long, like on Arrow. Obviously, we know Prometheus is Adrian Chase, about a month or so ago. He's the big bad, but the fact that they said Vigilante isn't going to be unmasked until season 6, I think that's not something they should do, especially with a writer's strike looming. So we might get our shows premiering later than October in the fall. So that would obviously also affect Riverdale, depending on if they intend on making season 2 like a 22-23 episode order and premiering it in September, October, or keeping it as mid-season and premiering it in January or March. We're going to have to see how the network goes with it. But yeah, I'm on board for the foreseeable future. And right now, it's, for the most part, each episode has had a pretty strong showing. So I'm going overall, 10 episodes of season 1, I'm giving it an 8 out of 10 from what we've seen. How about you, Stevie?
I am actually in the same boat. I would give it an 8.5 out of 10. Just because there are some things that I kind of watch and I'm like, okay, that's pushing it a little too much, or that's just so far from the characters. But I am a little biased because of the comics. So far, obviously, I'm sucked into the show and I enjoy watching it. I'll definitely watch season 2. My biggest concern, though, is once they do unveil the killer and however they take care of it, I just wonder how the show's going on, how it's going to go on, because that's the main premise of the entire show. And once you learn who killed Jason and, when the culprit is caught, where do you go from the rest of the show? And I think that's going to be my biggest issue with it, is I may end up getting bored from it because there's not really much else that you can top that, at least as of right now.
Yeah, I agree. So our ratings are all going to be pretty much similar. I'd say I'd also give it probably about an 8.5. There are things about it that I've touched on already, and Stevie hit the nail on the head as far as the way I feel about it as well. Is, where do you go from there? Again, I don't mean to beat a dead horse with, references to other shows, but Twin Peaks fizzled out after the second season, and I don't know if the audience just wasn't there or if so many people were mad that they didn't do the killer reveal at the end of the first season. But that's possible that it could happen with Riverdale. A show like Pretty Little Liars, which is one that actually had those kind of special Halloween episodes. It was something that they did for that show, and it was actually a pretty good fit. It went on for several seasons without really revealing the killer and or the mystery of who A was and all this, that, and the other. But so if they keep the mystery going on for the primary cast, but show us the viewers of who the killer is, that's definitely something that they could do. But people would feel as though they're cheated, perhaps. There's so many comparisons that you could make to shows like Dallas, where if you don't tell us who the killer of this one individual, this popular character is, you run the risk of alienating your viewers. And if you do give us the reveal, like at the end of Desperate Housewives season 1, if you basically you peel everything back and give away the answer to every mystery, then you run the risk of having that boredom that Stevie was talking about set in and saying like, okay, well, you've killed the hook. What else do you have? Those characters have to be so strongly established by that point that we feel the need to come back because we want to see what's going to happen in the rest of their lives. I see what's most likely going to happen, and this is a guess, but it seems like the writers are smart enough to be leading us in this direction. I'm suspecting that what Eric said is going to be kind of similar. They're not going to reveal yet another layer, possibly. I mean, it is a possibility, but I think what's going to happen is we're going to find out who the killer is. Maybe the entire, cast of characters is going to find out who the killer is. And in the final episode, we're either going to get another death, and the mystery of next season is going to be who killed that person, or they're going to reveal some other big mystery of, say Hiram Lodge. They're going to peel that back a little bit more, and that the catch next season is going to be some other mystery, maybe not a murder, but I feel like they're going to have to do that to really bring people back until these characters are so firmly established that they can just, have these characters stand on their own.
Well, I really hope that Riverdale doesn't turn into Pretty Little Liars, like how long they drug that show out, because I'm glad that you said that, because I was thinking about that show right when you said it, that I've noticed with a lot of shows now is they drag them on, and they drag them on to a point that it doesn't need to be. And even now with Pretty Little Liars, they revealed who A was, but then they did it to where, it was like 10 years later. And then it kicked off, and it was the same thing over and over, and it was just constantly being regurgitated. And I don't want that to happen with Riverdale. And I feel like they're going to have to be very careful on keeping in their viewers, because otherwise I have a feeling that it could become a very monotonous show. And it breaks my heart, because I hold Archie very, very dear to me, but I can see it happening very easily.
Yeah, my hope is that the drama aspect of it, the fact that it has kind of that romantic drama thing that kind of draws in a predominantly female audience. It's kind of got that CW feel, and I think it's on the right network to kind of bring. There's been a lot of shows that are similar to the romantic drama thing that Archie also has going on in it. I'm thinking that will probably be enough to keep the audience coming back once the characters are kind of firmly established. But I think it might take another season of a really good murder hook or a really good mystery hook to really cement our like for these characters or love for these characters as in Stevie's mind. So Eric, why don't you kind of wrap us up here, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah, they did say someone else is going to die before the season's over, but I don't know. Maybe it's going to be the killer is the one. It's the same killer, because I don't think it's going to be yet another murder mystery. I think it's going to be some other direction for season 2, but we'll see. Maybe that's how we find out someone gets a little too close, and then the killer is forced to feel that godlike power again, to make a reference to Malcolm in the Middle there. Something Josh and I joke about a lot. But anyway, it's certainly been a good episode. I hope you enjoyed Google Hangouts TV. It's your first time getting used to this. Is there anything you want to say before we close out the show?
No, I think that we covered a lot of it, and I'm very glad that you guys had me on today.
It was good having you. Yeah, that's pretty much going to do it. I think we've all said pretty much what we can say for what Riverdale's had to offer so far. So hopefully we will be back in the next few weeks. We'll probably be talking something DC related, I'd assume, since we obviously can't do 2.1 episodes in a row, because that would just be weird. But this is about the time I plug some links for all the latest news pertaining to DC across all forms of media. Check us out at dccomicsnews.com for our backlog of podcasts and other miscellanea. Check out multiverseentertainment.wordpress.com, which, by the way, this episode will be exclusive to that, being a point one. Although unrelated to this show, check out wegotThiscovered.com for all your entertainment needs. and our friends at culturejunkies.net, and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/a podcast for all seasons. So until listening, let's try that again. Until next time, thanks for listening and goodbye.
All right. And yeah, thanks for listening, guys. Stevie Yeager, thank you so much for being our special guest today. We knew you were the exact lady for the job for doing an Archie review, a Riverdale review. We'd love to have you back again in the future, hopefully for maybe a second season after we find out who this mysterious killer is. But hope you had a good time, and thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time.